Great. I think it's apropos that we're following Fred to, I'm not sure, is he a fintech company or a travel company? I think he's leaning toward fintech. But anyway, we have this nice clickbaity title for the session. So what is travel's secret weapon? Laurie?
Well, I think it's on some level a bit obvious that travel is travel's secret weapon. That there's a passion and that you attach yourself to emotionally, and that travel itself is why we stick to it. It's why we put up with it. It's why we put up with the economic changes or whatever those pressures may be. But travel is travel's secret weapon, in my mind.
All right. Well, I guess one of the big questions is how do you create value for travel? And I think we're going to be talking about fintech, which is certainly a hot topic. We only have a limited amount of time. So I guess playing off kind of the Hopper scenario, are travel companies becoming fintech companies? Or fintech companies are becoming travel companies? Or maybe that's not a difference? What's going on? How do you see it?
So in my opinion, it really depends on the company that you are, right? Is financial technology core to what you offer to your clients? So for instance, what we at Catalogs do is we firmly believe in embedding financial products for the end-to-end distribution channel. We talk about the travel transaction as being one transaction, and that's not only distributing hotel room inventory, but it's also taking care of the entire net payout structure in the back end. And I think this is super exciting for us, is that we also see huge value in offering credit to smaller travel agencies or TMCs, where they can just start and integrate to us and then immediately start trading hotel room inventory.
Okay, so you're actually offering credit to the agency or through the...
We're building a credit opportunity in our platform indeed, yes.
Okay, well, that's okay. So Brian, in your situation, doing credit a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think what's so exciting for travel is that there's always innovation happening all over the place. And the question for us is, what pieces of that can we find and bring to the travel industry to make it better? So in our case, fintech, there's so much innovation going on there. And we've looked at that and tried to say, all right, which pieces and parts of this can we bring to really help the most important aspects of travel? And I think what kind of ties what Laurie was saying is like, what is the tease in the title here is, what is the secret weapon? On the one hand, it's fintech, it's payments, but most people don't understand why we're doing it. And the big mystery of it is it's actually not about the payment, it's about the marketing. It's about driving the KPIs that marketers care about. It's about driving conversion, driving purchase size, helping travel providers sell ancillaries, and that's what this story is actually all about.
So if we're looking at the consumer side of the business, is there innovation? I mean, for North America, there's a lot of innovation, but a lot of these things have been happening, again, as Fred said, for, since 2015, they've been doing gamification pretty effectively in China, all sorts of different payment processes in South America. Are we just kind of copying things that have been well proven around the world when people skipped kind of from a cash society to a digital society?
Well, I would say that if you look outside of what we're used to in the US, North America, the 16-digit world that we grew up in, I think if you look globally, what are they doing in other parts of the world, then you can start to understand what's the right business model for you. I mean, maybe being a merchant of record for the entire journey is the right one, but that is an investment. And what are you trying to solve if you're going down that road? It can be a pain point if you're not ready to invest in the cost of accepting those payments. I mean, there are payments in parts of this world that you can offset those costs because you can then control the end-to-end aspect of how somebody's experience in engaging with you is managed. Is it simple? Is it difficult? I mean, I think Uber really did help us all understand what the word frictionless really means. And if you want to control not just the customer experience, but the payment experience, and you see those as one, then maybe taking on more of that investment to be the merchant of record is the right choice for you. But you do need to actually look at every link in that chain from the point of purchase to the point of actually paying your supplier. There's the consumer part of that journey, and then there's the supplier side of that, and they can be very different in terms of your costs and your processing.
Yeah, I think Uber's a great example. I mean, I took an Uber up here. I think I used $10 of American Express Uber cash that I get every month for whatever reason. And I think I got some extra Bonvoy points or something for it too. So it's tying in, as Brian said, to the marketing side as well. I guess that brings us somewhat to the wallet and the know your customer side of the business. I mean, if you look at, certainly Uber is a great example, Starbucks. Starbucks does now 70% of its business using their mobile app. Plus they have $1.5 billion in cash that's basically been pledged by their customers to be used in Starbucks in the future. It's huge, huge business. So travel, not quite there, aside from Uber, right? So what do you guys see as really kind of what's coming in terms of consumer habits, mobile, and the application of knowing your customer and being able to engage them effectively?
Yeah, I think, so if we take a step back and we look at how innovation has always been brought to the industry, it's always like B2B follows B2C. And it's always been the case. And indeed, what Laurie says about frictionless interacting with the Uber app or booking a flight nowadays using NDC, I think if you look at the B2B side of things, we are definitely not there yet, right? There are so many, the industry has been built by layers on top of layers because there was no technology stack that was able to do everything into one platform. So where I really see moving forward and where I see value is the entire, just de-platformize or basically platformize the entire industry. Where there's one central platform that connects to the single source of truth of the hotel or the airline, and then directly connected to the end user of it. So I think really taking a platform approach within the industry is something where we should go next, and that's what we can learn from companies like Starbucks and interacting with your consumers.
So that's kind of the centralization of it, but then you have this whole decentralized finance perspective too, where we're saying break it apart. So how does that play into the?
Well, and I think from my perspective, that's where your investment comes in. Because if you want to be a fintech, there are certain regions and compliance that will change country by country, region by region. So again, what are you trying to solve? You know, that you can deliver technology that delivers a good payment experience without becoming a fintech. So, you know, what is it you're trying to deliver? Because I do think the wallets are one way of not only delivering loyalty, but I don't know that it's delivering the payment experience. I don't know. I would argue that in some cases, if you're just a Starbucks and you're just selling the one thing and that's all you need to worry about, that's great. But in travel, that's just not our life. We don't live that way. We have air, we have ground services, we got, you know, all kinds of different ancillary pieces to that puzzle. And then as a merchant, which parts of that do you need to own? What is your core business?
But also maybe what is fintech in this sense? Right? Everyone wants to be a fintech company and ride the buzz of offering financial products, but in the end, in my opinion, you're not a fintech company if you're a consumer app that accepts payment, if you use an external payment company. I think that's the decision between buy and build. And if it's core to your product, if it's core to what you want to achieve, then put in the effort. And like we're requesting the licensees to operate globally and process payments. And I think that's where you should see whether or not it's a value add to your product.
And I think that if you look at the payment, sure, if people think of that as the end of the transaction, and I like your question, Robert, about mobile, it's taking off, people are using mobile apps for all kinds of things. But in travel, being able to book on a website, being able to handle a transaction through a call center, these are all really important, and it actually adds a lot of interesting complexity, not to even mention how we settle and pay on with the providers themselves. But if you kind of look at that, I mean, I think the thing that is common, and it's also related to this question about human behavior and whatnot, It's how do you deliver that same experience across all of these different channels and methods. And in our case, what we're trying to do is take something like a $1,000 trip purchase. You're reframing it in people's brains to 12 payments of $84. Suddenly, the click rate goes way up everywhere you put that, everything from the page before checkout to all the way upstream, even to your SEO pages. But it also has to work across all these channels. So we've sort of had to work to get that, like not only web, call center, but what's interesting for us, and I'll end on this point, which is that a lot of people think that means you need to get another app. And in our strategy, a lot of people are trying to build apps. And so, for example, like if you go to United, you find Uplift inside the United app as a component. And that's what we want to do with our friends and partners, not say, oh, you must get our app. We're trying to support the loyalty and the wallets and the functionality of our partners, which is a very subtle but important difference.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, certainly not in travel, like Klarna, right? I connect right on the Ticketmaster app, boom, right here, 4 payments. And just very interesting, that lift that they get from that, just to make it easier for the folks when they're seeing, sticker shock from concert tickets, sticker shock from travel prices, especially the way they're...
Let me add one follow-up to that too. It's really interesting because, Klarna is sort of the grandfather of a lot of this, like splitting up the payments, buy now, pay later or whatnot. We think of it as flexible payments, and we tend to work with larger transaction amounts, like up to $25,000, where we'll approve in a second. But I actually think that some of the early deals that got done were literally the dumbest deals that merchants ever did. And part of it's because big companies are split up. You have a payments function, and they've got the payment page, but then you have all the marketing people, and they control all the rest of the pages, like in your website. And what happens is the payments people basically did the biggest marketing deal without realizing it, where they basically gave all of their customers away to Klarna. These were people who were just shoppers. These are the people that actually bought and transacted. And the reason why it's particularly stupid for Macy's is that most of the other merchants in that system are little fashion merchants that no one has ever heard of. So Macy's took everybody who bought from them and handed them off to everybody else as a marketing. So this is why it's very delicate, and I think this is a very savvy audience where, yes, you're not going to want to take all of your customers and send them off to your competitors and alternate distribution channels. So yes, it's all fintech, it's all flexible payments, we're reframing this, but there's some really subtle details.
There are consequences to certain business decisions,
But I think, to his point, if you don't consider the consistency across those channels, and if you don't have, at least in my mind, you should always have 3 people in your company at the table. You should have the treasury and accounting people, because they need to know where the money is. Let's be honest. Reporting does matter to them. And you should have the people who are driving the revenue, because they're looking to draw customers to your product. So they should have a decision point at that table. And then technology. Technology is trying to bridge all this and deliver it in a way that does drive a decent experience. And I don't know that you always have all 3 of them weighing in on your roadmap and your way of how you want to do business. And I think that consistency I think we talked about this before, but QR codes are also another great output from the pandemic. But I think we also learned a lot about refunds.
Yeah.
So if you can't just think about the sale, I need to sell. How do you manage change? How do you manage those disruptions?
Yeah, and QR codes are a great example. I actually, unfortunately, turned down a consulting group assignment with a particular organization, and they were working with arenas and venues, putting QR codes to communicate customers. Huge uplifts, labor savings, all this stuff. But the problem with the QR code is it can be spoofed very easily. You just put something over it, and who knows where these people are going. It's like, guys, I'm sorry, I can't really work with you. You've got an underlying flaw in your product, right? Which is tough. Or, I guess on the other hand, we can do all these things. Or just, there's Apple, right? Apple Pay, it does everything, people trust it, and that becomes the center of the universe.
Do they trust it?
My daughters trust it, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Me, not so much.
But
I remember the Apple Lisa. So,
but see, I think this is the intersection too. For if you're going to drive payments, there's a trusted intersection. And if you want to take over that delivery, do people trust you to give you their money or their account credentials or whatever it is they have to give you to transact? Is your brand strong enough for that? I don't know. I mean, Apple just, on some level, they are, obviously. But maybe on another level, they're not.
Yeah, no, and I think everyone has an individual trust level, and well, we'll start getting into that when we talk a little bit more about decentralized sorts of things. The other one is rewards programs as a currency. I mean, if you look at it, it's Startline, I'm sure fairly astute audience here, but if you look at the valuation, the market cap of a major airline like an American or United, it's $10 to $15 billion. I mean, 2020, they were doing certain debt movements. Their reward programs were valued at maybe 25 billion. So you start netting that out and go, wait, the airline operation has a net market cap of minus 10 billion, which is just crazy. But you look at the Starwood Marriott merger, that was basically Starwood preferred guest getting acquired, plus some real estate assets, right? So what about the value of that as a currency and opportunity to be able to do it? And I guess Starbucks plus gamification, things like that is a pretty good example as well.
Yeah, I think personally that it's huge, right? You incentivize people to come back to your application or your website in order to spend money or buy that airline ticket or buy that hotel, because they know that if they buy a lot more, they have something there's something in store for them as well. So I am personally a big fan of loyalty programs, also myself, but the downside is not everyone can afford to build a loyalty program. You need to be a player in the market. You need to show you need to have shown value over and over to the consumer to be able to offset that in indeed a wallet function or something.
Yeah, and some scale to go around
Scale,
it. So you have utility for
yes.
you can earn, you may be able to earn, but you have to be
yes.
able to efficiently burn to.
Yes.
To
But I think loyalty is one of those things too, that you can have loyalty without rewards.
True.
So what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, misnomer loyalty. These are not loyalty programs.
Yeah.
These are reward programs. The gamification is conversion of employers' business travel spend to personal leisure travel benefit. That has always been the game, and that's fine. But yeah, the loyalty, at least the stats that I've seen for Marriott, their highest level guests actually stay more at the aggregate of other hotels. Now, Marriott's doing really well with those guests, and I think it's great. They just don't have an idea of the entire wallet. And you find, when you really dig in, that, hey, they're staying more at the combination of Hilton and Hyatt and everybody else. So yeah, it's a crazy game. Maybe we just have a little bit of time. Crypto. You can't talk about fintech without crypto. And not the speculative asset type stuff, but does it go mainstream digital? I mean, governments, financial institutions, capital markets really recognizing this, so you can start doing much simpler interbank transfers, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
To be honest, no. Yeah. Sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead. By the way, you take that one. Go ahead, Paul.
What happened with the FTX already shows that it's not ready to be for the big market as an asset class to pay your consumer goods with, right? It's so volatile, it's not regulated. So me personally, as it is now, I don't really see it adding value for consumer payments or adding financial products, but as a technology, it's something completely different.
Yeah.
The blockchain technology.
The anonymity and trust is an issue.
Trust.
Because, again, actually we were speaking earlier, just in preparation, like Apple Pay is backed up by a bank, which is backed up by the FDIC. So there is some inherent trust in that layering where, as opposed to whatever, Brian coin, something like that.
Well, and I think it's because there's always an opportunity. Why not have another way to pay and whatnot? But I think in some ways, if you think about something that is anonymous, I mean, we're in a world where we're trying to create frictionless, and how does that work? It's harder, right? And I'm not sure. There's certainly many use cases hiding in here. Like, gee, I live in a different country, and maybe this is an easier way to get the payment done somehow. But really, for the most part, we're trying to create a world where we see this every step of the way, where we recognize the person, we make it more frictionless, we make the consumer experience increasingly seamless. And in some ways, yes, you could do that maybe with crypto, but I think to me, it feels like it's headed in the wrong direction from where we're going with most of the things we're doing. Because at the end of the day, what's special about travel is that there's just all this shopping, and quite frankly, I think it's a lot of entertainment, it's fun, it's great to dream, but when the person finally gets there, you really want to get that transaction closed, and so all this stuff that creates friction and distraction and everything else, I think is maybe not as useful. I mean, there are some use cases, but I don't think it's a super mainstream use case for, like, look, we're working with Southwest, United, Carnival, the low-cost carriers, Air Canada. I don't think they're going, boy, that's really going to change our business. We could just take some Dogecoin.
Yeah.
Well, I think, too, if you look at the global aspect of it, it's just not accessible. It's not accessible not only to buy, but to return your money. I mean, if we're trying to move towards a cardless society, if we're trying to evolve payments, I think you have to think about the cashless. There are people still who are unbanked. They still have cash. They still don't have a way to transact. So who are you targeting with the crypto? I'm not quite sure. I think that, to your point, the technology solves more than the coin, the currency.
What's the old saying with technology? When you invent the ship, you invent the shipwreck, right? Is that how it goes? Okay, only have a couple minutes left. Want to get quick predictions. Future. What's the future of fintech and travel? If we can. Oh, I start with you, Paul.
So, yeah, I think it's a little bit controversial to say, but if you look at the macroeconomic trends now happening, that means that the economy is slowing down. When the economy is slowing down, what you tend to see is that companies really need to rethink their strategy and their position and their technology stack, because they cannot really focus on consumer buying their products. So where I think everything is going, especially I'm just talking about the industry that we're active in, is we're going to you're going to see a disintermediation of the distribution industry and removing layers, and then choosing a platform that services you on every single level, whether it's your payouts, whether it's your distribution. So I think in general, you'll see more end-to-end solution for the business-to-business side.
And peer-to-peer using some channels or platforms to go make that happen. Okay. Brian?
So I think my prediction, I'm going to tie sort of the beginning of this to the end of sort of what is the secret or the less obvious thing, which is that really there's an opportunity to change marketing. And in marketing, people talk about the P's of marketing, things like product, price, place, promotion. So my prediction is that someday, and it may take a while for the textbooks to get updated, is that payments will become one of those P's of marketing. And if I give you just one extra example to sort of underscore that point, which is that everybody would love to sell more ancillaries. We'd like to take the high margin pieces of travel and make sure we sell those. So one of the things we've been very focused on with our great partner United is to sell more upgraded seats. And who wouldn't want a better seat for just a couple dollars more a month? And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about.
Laurie, very quickly.
I still go back to the fact that travel's the secret weapon, and I think that to the degree that you don't know you paid for something but you got what you wanted, that's where I'd like to see us end up.
I think it's simple with that. And then my prediction is I'm a big SSI fan, so self-sovereign identity. I think the fintech really goes once people can start having control of their data and you start having some more validated private transactions. And then you can start using things like the technologies like NFTs and things like that, which are great, backed by smart contracts for coupons and things like that. But the whole anonymous, who is this, all that friction needs to kind of go away. Then you can start effectively using distributed ledgers. You can effectively start using NFTs for kind of good instead of random chaos. So. Very good. Well, thanks very much. We're out of time, and thanks very much for your attention.